I'll admit it, I am the kind of guy to say I told you so. If you've been following Bitcoin news, then you've heard about Mt. Gox and what happened to it. The Bitcoin bank went bankrupt. Now, this incident, along with some others, has left the future of the cryptocurrency in limbo. Now, some people are saying that this is going to be the absolute death of the currency. People like me, who have always been very big critics of this and its supposed powers and what people say it can do, this is probably going to spell the beginning of the end of the cryptocurrency, as it's lost a tremendous amount of its value after this incident. There are others who are much more positive about it, say that this is just a temporary setback and that the value of the cryptocurrency is going to go back up. Now, when Mt. Gox went out of business, it was said that it held 740,000 bitcoins. Now, at an average of about $800 per bitcoin, that's about $592 million worth of the cryptocurrency that's probably gone forever. We don't know exactly where they are or what's going to happen, but we do know that when the company went down, pretty much those bitcoins went with it. And then only days later, flexcoin, another Bitcoin bank, got robbed. This time, the thieves made off with about 896 bitcoins, which the bank says is worth about $600,000. Now, the company said due to this loss, they actually can't keep running. And again, another Bitcoin bank has gone under because of these kinds of actions. Now, at the time of this recording, each Bitcoin is worth about $440 each. Now, that's down from the $800 it was before Mt. Gox, and it's down from $1,000 where it was last November. So these recent incidents have caused a severe drop in value. By no means can I say that I was the only person who predicted this coming. In fact, Peter Schiff did predict something like this was coming too. Now, the thing is, I saw this coming, and this is very far from the last video that I made on Bitcoin, where somebody said that this was the shortest short-term growing pains of any currency in history. I mean, is this a short-term growing pain? I mean, I don't remember one time where, frankly, the US dollar ever went down by half its value overnight. Now, this is what happens when you have a currency that's unregulated, even something as small and a lot more simple to use like Bitcoin, as opposed to the US dollar. And as I predicted in the last video, there was going to be some kind of crash, some kind of incident where a lot of people were going to lose everything, and then there were going to be calls for regulation. Now, a lot of central banks are talking about possibly regulating, tracking, and taxing Bitcoin right now. The country farthest along this path is Japan. And in fact, this Friday, their parliament is going to have a vote on whether or not to start regulating the currency. And some of these regulations are actually quite reasonable. Gains from trading bitcoins on online exchanges and purchases made with them will be subject to Japanese tax. Banks will be prohibited from handling them, and security firms will be barred from brokering Bitcoin trades. Significantly, the guidelines will call for taxing Bitcoin transactions. Purchases made in Bitcoins will be subject to Japan's consumption tax, which is set to rise to 8% on April 1st. Trading gains will be taxed, and companies will need to pay tax on revenue earned from Bitcoin transactions. But enforcement could prove difficult, as tax authorities will have to track down users. And some more information on this particular Japanese context to Bitcoin, I'd like to turn it over to a friend of mine, John, who's a Marxist who lives in Japan right now.
Hello everyone, this is me, John Doe, right here in Tokyo, Japan, here in my little humble abode. Now, Comrade Unruh has requested that I give some comments on this recent issue of Bitcoin in Japan being regulated and taxed as a commodity, exactly as was predicted. This is what's happening. But it's interesting how Japan has come to make this move. Now, Bitcoin has been growing in size and popularity as a so-called alternative currency. But it's not going to work. It's an ineffective way to challenge the capitalist control over currency. Now, here's what's happened. Mt. Gox, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, G-O-X, I believe, yeah? Now, they were a Tokyo-based Bitcoin exchange. Very large, very influential among this Bitcoin so-called currency. Well, they went under, closed operations, took everybody's money, and said, "See ya, suckers," basically. But it's interesting what was going on here in Japan with that, right? Now, McGrox, their account was being operated and facilitated by this very large bank here in Japan called Mizuho Bank. Very large bank. What it's come out is that there was money laundering going on, which is suspected to be connected to the Japanese underworld, or known as the Yakuza here in Japan. Now, the Yakuza are very, very, very detrimental to society in general here in Japan, and are always a constant trouble. But a lot of the capitalists in Japan, political class, are known to have connections to them, but they like to keep it unofficial. So when you're caught having connections to them, big, big no-no. It doesn't work out for you. You are in big trouble in Japan. So what was happening here was that Mizuho Bank was allowing Bitcoin, or McGrox, to be more precise, to engage in these illegal, what they call illegal transactions with the Yakuza. It's illegal to have any type of financial connection to them. And Bitcoin was clearly, McGrox, was clearly having these type of connections to them, right? So they get busted doing this. Now, Mizuho Bank is not the first time they've had this issue. A while back, which is still a problem, they were caught having clear accounts that were connected to Yakuza-known companies. So when this comes out, Japan's going to react to this. This is a threat. Bitcoin's a clear threat to the capitalist banking system. They're not going to let this go down anymore. So what do? They announced that, yes, we are going to tax this. We're going to regulate it. And we're not going to treat it as a currency. It's going to be treated as a commodity, so we can profit from it. Clear, known, expected tactic that they're going to do. They're going to commodify it, instead of allowing it to grow as an actual alternative currency. So you see here, Comrade Unruh called it on point. As soon as Bitcoin becomes an actual threat to the system, the capitalists will commodify it. They're not going to let it grow. And now it's connected to the underworld and Yakuza, is dead as an alternative currency here in Japan. So again, I thank Comrade Unruh for allowing me to present these comments, these perspective on Japan. And until next time, this is me, John Doe, here in Tokyo. Checking out, comrades.
Thanks, John. Now, right now, the U.S. government is looking at possibly doing the same thing. The central bank, the Federal Reserve, is looking into whether or not it wants to possibly regulate Bitcoins or it wants to ban them outright. Now, frankly, I stand on the side of not banning Bitcoins because, frankly, it's not going to work. It's like banning alcohol or tobacco or drugs. I mean, prohibition is just simply not going to work. I mean, you just can't police the internet enough to actually prevent Bitcoins from existing. Can you track down big users and prosecute them? Sure. Just like you can do with drugs. But you're never going to actually stop, digital currency from existing. So I fully support some kind of regulation, not outright banning it, because frankly, it's not going to work. What I do agree with is the path that Japan is taking right now. What it's trying to do is take the inherent instability of Bitcoin and isolate the formal economy from it, which means Bitcoin can run around, have their, their completely, their values jumping up and down and doing whatever they want, but try to make that impact on the economy as little as possible. So I think that's definitely a really good thing. I would say isolate Bitcoin away from the formal economy, let it be as completely flexible or unstable as it wants, and then just let the currency destroy itself. In fact, what I largely see is the kind of doomsday scenario that Bitcoin users usually give for the Federal Reserve and fiat currency. Now think about the fact that every single time a cryptocurrency is developed enough to where it's really hard to mine to get anything out of it, another one appears. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Mintcoin, Pandacoin, Ron Paul coin, Dogecoin. Every time one of these currencies gets to the point where it's difficult to mine and no longer actually worth the effort, somebody just creates a new one. Now in here we see the actual kind of fiat kind of situation. Eventually what we're going to have is like all these cryptocurrencies completely flooding everything. And isn't that what they say is going to happen with fiat currency? That's just going to get printed out of control. There's going to be this insane out of control inflation, which hasn't even happened with even 3 rounds of quantitative easing. The very thing it is that they're trying to avoid with fiat currency by placing a limit on a digital currency is still happening. You just create another currency and do the same thing all over again. And now you have all these currencies floating all around all over the place. Well, that becomes the same kind of supply and demand effect that they say applies to fiat currency. Well, okay, yeah, I could take a Bitcoin, but you know, there's like 92 or even now probably about 200 other cryptocurrencies. Yeah, I could sell it for Bitcoins, but nobody really wants to give them up. So I'll just start trading as something else. Then you have that whole doomsday fiat kind of scenario. So I would say to the Federal Reserve, to the Bank of Canada, to the Bank of Japan, the legislators, just insulate yourselves from cryptocurrencies. Just make it so that they do as little damage to your economy as possible, and just let them destroy themselves. I mean, this is very much starting to look very much like it's just a fad. Just let the currencies burn themselves out and eventually fade away. But in the meantime, cover your own formal real economy. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.